Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another update on college football playoff chances for all teams still relevant in relation to the playoff. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to look at a few schedules, a lot of different scenarios at play as we enter week number 8. You do have Ohio State, 96% chance to make the playoff. You've got Indiana at a 92. Oregon now, after their loss to Indiana, down at a 62% chance. But Ohio State and Indiana, I would say, based off the schedules, based off the fact that both of these teams still face Penn State, and Penn State is not good, they're at the point to where they are going to make the playoff. There is this expectation of a 12-0 versus 12-0 collision course, Ohio State versus Indiana, possibly a 1v2, 1v3 Big Ten championship matchup. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But you don't even need to really go through their schedules. I mean, it's set up to where Ohio State and Indiana, if they lose a game even, it would be an upset because the Big Ten is extremely weak outside of a few teams at the top this year. Although you could argue maybe Washington's decent, USC, Michigan, but Ohio State already faced Washington. They only face Michigan. They don't face USC. And they don't face Oregon. And Indiana just beat Oregon, so they've got them in their rearview mirror. And it looks like Indiana is in the driver's seat for sure to make the Big Ten championship, and so is Ohio State. You've got Alabama now at an 84% chance. That seems a little bit rich for Bama, but they've been winning some important games. They get Tennessee at home, at South Carolina versus LSU versus Oklahoma. I mean, it's an easier road schedule for Bama. Their two road games are at South Carolina and at Auburn. I mean, that's manageable. They can still lose another game and make the playoff. So they could drop a game versus LSU or versus Tennessee and still make the playoff. So I do think Bama's in a very good spot. I mean, there's always the chance for an upset to where they finish 9-3, but based off the road schedule, I think they're in a very good spot to make the playoff. You've got Miami at an 81% chance, which surprises me a little bit, but it's more to do with their analytical issues. They're not really highly rated analytically. Like, a lot of people rate them higher in real life than the actual analytics do. But their schedule, I mean, there's no ranked teams here. Now, you could argue at SMU could be a little challenging. Other than that, maybe at Pitt. I think Pittsburgh's been playing better recently. The thing is with the ACC, I mean, if you win the ACC, you're going to make it. Now, the question for Miami is, will they get that bye? You go 12-1, you're ACC champions. Maybe you drop one of these games you shouldn't drop, but you're still 12-1. You're probably going to make it, and you're probably going to be inside the top 4, although it's debatable. You go 13-0, you're for sure going to be inside the top 4, probably inside the top 2. So I think Miami's still in a great spot. I mean, if they get upset, they get upset. If they lose a game in conference, they're still set up to make the ACC championship. They win the ACC championship, they'll be fine. Now, if they lose the ACC championship, that's when you start comparing their resume at 11-2 with the 10-2 SEC teams who didn't even make their conference championships, and then that's a different argument. You've got Texas A&M at a 78% chance. A lot of these SEC teams at the top, it's going to be the raw fact that they have two mulligans. Like, Texas A&M is 6-0, so they can lose 2 games. They can go 4-2 in their final 6 games and make the playoff very easily. At Arkansas, they're your 7.5-point favorites. At LSU, you're probably going to be underdogs at LSU, but probably by 3 points. At Missouri, that could be a challenging game. Versus South Carolina, is A&M out of the woods yet? I don't know. These are 3 tough road games here. I mean, the thing is they've had a lot of home games, and they've had a very easy SEC. Like, this is part of the reason they're 6-0 and they're top 5. Versus Auburn, versus Mississippi State, versus Florida, and then at Arkansas. That's a very easy start to your SEC schedule. Very easy. So I would maybe there needs to be some caution with Texas A&M. At LSU, at Missouri, at Texas, those are 3 games you could lose. They're all on the road. Now if they go 1-2 in those games, you finish 10-2, you're gonna make the playoff. You got to make sure you beat Arkansas. You got to make sure you beat South Carolina at home. But A&M, I think, is set up in a decent spot. But also, I mean, people have to understand, looking at their schedule again. I mean, at Notre Dame, that's a game you could argue that Notre Dame kind of blew, but it was an impressive win. Versus Auburn, versus Mississippi State, versus Florida. These are not tough games. UTSA, Utah. I mean, this is not a very hard schedule so far. I mean, and they're all home SEC games as well. So it seems like A&M might be skating by based off of that schedule. But maybe they'll make the playoff. I mean, they have 0 losses. Georgia has 1 loss. They got the win on the road at Auburn. So they can afford to have another loss. You've got Ole Miss at home. They're 7.5-point favorites in that game. Florida at home, or not at home, that's a neutral site game. That's the rivalry game. At Mississippi State, that's basically a gimme. I know Mississippi State is having a better year, but Texas, but they host Texas. Charlotte, they host Charlotte, and then Georgia Tech, they host Georgia Tech. That Georgia Tech game could be huge if they lose one of these other games and they have 2 losses, but I don't think Georgia Tech is as good as people say. I don't know. Georgia to me is a 10-2 team. I think they make the playoff as like a 9 or a 10 seed, kind of the same spot that Tennessee was last year. Texas Tech, 69% chance to make the playoff. You look at these games at Arizona State. We'll see if Leavitt plays, Sam Leavitt, but either way, they're 10-point favorites. Oklahoma State, that's like a gimme. At Kansas State, probably a gimme. Kansas State's not been good this year. BYU, they're undefeated. That could be a good game. But yeah, I would say worst case scenario, Tech finishes 11. Well, worst case, maybe they go 10-2, but probably 11-1. People think Tech is by far the best team in the Big 12. I don't know if there's that crazy amount of separation, honestly. I think people might be overrating Tech a little bit. But right now, for sure, they're the best team. I just don't know by how much. All right, so you've got Oregon with 1 loss, a 63% chance to make the playoff. Oregon, they just have to go 10-2. So they've got at Rutgers, you got to win that game. You're 17-point favorites. Wisconsin at home, that's an easy win. At Iowa, that's iffy, honestly, for Oregon. Probably an easy win. I wouldn't label a game at Kinnick an easy win. I'd say it's an annoying team to face on the road, but you got to win that game if you're Oregon. You've got Minnesota. That's a Friday night game at home. That's a gimme. USC, but they host USC. And then at Washington. Okay. So Oregon, I'm not saying they're going to miss the playoff, but versus USC and at Washington, that's not an easy stretch. At Iowa is also potentially challenging. I think they probably finish 10. Well, they could finish 11-1. They might be favorites in all these games, but there could be a slip up at Washington or versus USC, but they probably finish 11-1. Honestly, let's be real. Ole Miss with a 60% chance. They're 6-0. They have 2 mulligans. At Georgia, they're big underdogs. I think they lose to Georgia, but it's probably close. At Oklahoma, that's a noon game, so that's good for them. It's not a night game. So maybe, it's 11 a.m. Central, but that schedule, that game time has already been released. But Oklahoma, that's a pick'em game, honestly. But Ole Miss has the offensive talent by far over Oklahoma. South Carolina at home, you got to win. The Citadel or the Citadel. Florida, Mississippi State. Yeah, I think they finish 10-2. Probably worst case scenario is 10-2, unless the wheels fall off. The Egg Bowl could be challenging with Mississippi State being better this year, but I think Ole Miss should be fine to finish 10-2. You're looking at like a fringe 8, 9, 10 seed for Ole Miss if they finish 10-2. Memphis, the group of 5 team at 42% chance. Yeah, this is whatever. With the group of 5 teams, I think it's Memphis or South Florida. That's about it. BYU at 37% chance. They're undefeated right now. They're underdogs against Utah. I think Utah's just a better team than BYU. Like, you look at BYU, 3-point win against Colorado. 14-point home win against West Virginia. Arizona, they were losing that entire game. They won it in overtime. These are not impressive games. And then they've got, this is the problem with BYU. For the Big 12, this is a brutal schedule. At Iowa State. Iowa State's lost some games, but still, that's not an easy game in the Big 12. At Texas Tech. Versus TCU. TCU's a good team this year. At Cincinnati. Cincinnati's a good team. I see them losing 2 games minimum. I don't see BYU making the playoff based off this schedule. I think they lose to Utah, but even then, even if they get by Utah, you've got road games at Iowa State and at Tech. And then you've got a road game at Cincy at the end of the year. And you're also hosting TCU, who's a solid team. It's a tough schedule. Texas at a 33% chance. They already have 2 losses. So they can't lose another game. Unless people think there's going to be a 3-loss SEC team that makes it. Yeah, I just see them losing. They're going to lose to one of these teams. Probably Georgia on the road, if I had to guess. The way their offense is still not good. That's the problem with Texas. They still don't have a good offense. Mississippi State, honestly, they might lose to Mississippi State on the road. It's a game you should win. You should beat Vanderbilt at home. Yeah, with this schedule, there's no way Texas makes the playoff. I'm sorry. They're just not good enough offensively this year. And they already have 2 losses. They can't afford another one. LSU has 1 loss, 32% chance to make it at Vanderbilt. You got to win that game. You got to beat Vanderbilt. I'm sorry. They're 2-point underdogs. You're LSU. Go win that game. A&M, That's a winnable game at home. The way I see it, I mean, this is what I think. You've got to split these two games versus A&M and at Bama. You got to go 1-1 in that stretch. You also have to beat Vanderbilt. You get Arkansas at home, that's a gimme. Western Kentucky's a gimme. At Oklahoma, that's manageable. It's winnable. That's a defensive game, LSU, Oklahoma. Those are good defenses, not great offenses, but LSU has more offensive potential than Oklahoma. So they have to, if they lose to Vandy, I think they're done, because I don't see them going undefeated in this 2-game stretch. A&M, Alabama, they've got to make sure if they lose to Vandy, it's going to be a real problem, because they're going to have to win out. South Florida, yeah. So it's South Florida or Memphis in terms of the group of 5. That's what I would say right now. USC had a 30% chance. So USC beats Michigan, very impressive win. At Notre Dame, massive game for both teams. If Notre Dame wins, I think it's smooth sailing. Now I'll go to Notre Dame's schedule in a second, but if they beat Notre Dame, Notre Dame's gone. It opens up another spot. Notre Dame is hogging a spot because they're an independent. So if Notre Dame loses, that might open up another spot for an ACC team, for a Big Ten team like USC, the point with USC is if they finish 10-2, they're going to make it anyways, because they've got the win now versus Michigan. Actually, they've had kind of an easy schedule, but Notre Dame's a good team. So the schedule is going to get a lot harder for them. But so far, it's not like they have, the win against Michigan, but Michigan's unranked now. The Michigan State win is very not good. Like 14-point win at home is not good against Michigan State. But look, Notre Dame, if they somehow win this game, you've got a game at Nebraska. That's tough. It's a tough place to play. But I think they're going to be favorites in that game if they beat Notre Dame. But either way, you're talking about one loss. You have one loss available if you're USC. Now, there might be some people. Now, here's the thing. If you beat Notre Dame and Nebraska but lose to Oregon, I think they make the playoff. They also have Iowa and UCLA. Both Iowa and UCLA are kind of interesting teams in the Big Ten. I wouldn't Sharpie in a victory for USC against either Iowa or UCLA. Although, I don't know. Maybe I'm overrating UCLA. Everyone's talking about UCLA. They're still 2-4. Did that just, no, I thought I muted myself. But, so they have one loss. If they lose to Notre Dame, I think they're done, because I don't see them beating Oregon. I know Oregon this year, maybe not as good, but because they also have Nebraska on the road. So USC, there can be 4 Big Ten teams that make the playoff. There can be. Because if you think about it, Oregon, USC, Ohio State, Indiana, those would be the 4. And maybe also Nebraska. I'll go over Nebraska whenever they come up. You've got Tennessee with a 28% chance. Tennessee already with one loss at Bama. They're 10-point underdogs at Bama. It's going to be a challenge. So if they have their second loss after this week at Kentucky, you got to win that game. Yeah, this is a manageable schedule. This is why Tennessee does still have a chance if they lose to Bama. They still have a chance to make the playoff. The problem for Tennessee is they really don't have any good wins. Looking at this, wow. Mississippi State is their good win, I guess. They barely lost to Georgia. But I guess their good win would be versus Oklahoma or versus Vandy if they lose to Alabama. But that's actually a pretty light schedule for them in the SEC. I wonder if, that's something interesting. You do have to face Georgia and Bama, but other than that, you get your 2 other toughest opponents at home. Or 3 out of your top 4 toughest opponents at home. I think Tennessee can run the table after losing to Bama. I think they're going to be favorites in all these games. They might not win them all, but Tennessee's an interesting one to watch. Vanderbilt had a 26% chance versus LSU, versus Missouri, at Texas. They're not going to make it. They're going to lose at least 3 games. I can already tell. You've got Oklahoma at a 23% chance. At South Carolina, they're like 5-point favorites versus Ole Miss. At Tennessee, at Bam. Yeah, they're not going to make it. I can tell. They're going to lose possibly 4 games. All right, Notre Dame at a 23% chance. So Notre Dame is sitting in a spot now. USC is ranked 20th. So Notre Dame, it looks like, you start 0-2, you lose the tough games. You're winning every game. You're covering all these spreads. You're blowing all these teams out. You face USC, you're 8.5-point favorites. Obviously, you have to win. But after this, you basically run into a bunch of ACC slop. Well, they also have Navy. People think, well, this Navy team is good. Guys, Navy is undefeated, but they are analytically not good at all. Like, I wonder what this game, 97% chance to win. What would the point spread equivalent be to this? Like a 22-point favorite? That's not going to be a competitive game unless it's a crazy upset. Is that a neutral site game? Is that like a Yankee Stadium game or something? No, it's not. Sometimes they do that versus service academies, but USC 7:30. You win that game at Boston College, you're going to be 20-point favorites. Versus Navy, you're 20-point favorites. At Pittsburgh, maybe 14-point favorites, 14.5-point favorites at Pittsburgh. Versus Syracuse, 25-point favorites. At Stanford, 19.5-point favorites, something like that. So the point is they're going to be heavily favored if they beat USC. The question for Notre Dame is, if USC loses to Notre Dame, they're probably going to drop back a little bit. I don't know, maybe they'll still be ranked, but if USC loses then to Nebraska on the road, USC is going to be unranked, and they're not going to have a ranked win. This is a problem for Notre Dame. Notre Dame can finish 10-2, and you think, well, they're going to make it. The issue is they are not going to have a good win unless USC, wins a lot of these games. Because it's not like Arkansas is a good win. Boise State this year is not that good. And none of these teams, really none of them, outside of, Navy's undefeated, but they're not. I don't think they're going to finish the season undefeated, obviously, or even with like 2 or 3 losses. I think they're probably going to lose. They're going to lose multiple games, like 4 games possibly. The problem for Notre Dame is just they're not going to have any quality wins unless USC goes on a run after losing to Notre Dame. I think Utah is hitting their stride. They probably have to win out. So at BYU, you got to win it, obviously. Versus Colorado, versus Cincy. Yeah, this is a manageable schedule. This is a manageable schedule for Utah. Utah is a team to watch. Utah has 1 loss going into, they lost to Tech. That was a really bad game for them. But they may have 1 loss at the end of the season. Maybe they make the Big 12 championship. They get a rematch with Tech. But there's Utah. Missouri sitting at 21% chance to make the playoff. They got the loss at Auburn. People think they're going to lose to Auburn. They lose to Auburn, they're going to be screwed. But they beat Auburn at Vanderbilt. You can beat Vanderbilt if you're Missouri. A&M at home. Honestly, it's winnable. I don't know if they'll win it, but it's winnable. To me, all these games are winnable for Missouri, but they could also lose them. Missouri's probably a 9-3 team if I had to guess. Maybe a loss at Vanderbilt and at Oklahoma or versus A&M, something like that. It's very hard to predict a lot of these SEC teams. Who is next? Georgia Tech, 19% chance they're undefeated, right? They're underdogs at Duke, so they're 2.5-point underdogs or 1.5-point underdog. I think they're going to lose to Duke. All these games are winnable versus Syracuse. They're going to be like 12-point favorites at NC State. What is this? Yeah, they're barely going to be favorites at NC State. They'll be like 4 or 5-point favorites. At Boston College, they'll be double-digit favorites. Versus Pittsburgh. Dude, they like Pittsburgh, the analytics. They'll be slight favorites over Pittsburgh. And then this Georgia game, is this neutral site? Yeah, it is neutral site. It's going to be heavily Georgia fans, but that's Mercedes-Benz. It's an in-state neutral site game. Georgia would be like, 12, 13, 14-point favorites, neutral site. I don't see it with Georgia Tech. I just don't. I don't think they're a very good team. I know they're undefeated right now. Washington sitting with a 17% chance. Yeah, they have to beat Michigan. They have the 1 loss to Ohio State. A lot of people are really outraged that Washington is not ranked. And I would have them ranked. I'd probably have them like 22 or 23 if I did a poll. But it is fair to say there's a few things with Washington. They don't have a great win. I guess Washington State, now that Washington State almost beat Ole Miss. But, they beat Michigan. I think they should be in the top 20 if they beat Michigan on the road. They're 4.5, 5-point underdogs. Versus Illinois. That's a good game, Washington, Illinois. But Illinois traveling. Washington probably going to be favorites in that one. At Wisconsin, you would figure with how bad Wisconsin is. Versus Purdue, you would figure that's a win. At UCLA, you would figure it's a win. And then you get Oregon at home. There's a scenario where they have 2 losses. They could even lose to Michigan, win all these games, and then say we're fighting for a playoff spot versus Oregon at 9-2, facing Oregon to try and get to 10-2 and make the playoff. There's a scenario where that could happen for Washington. If Washington loses to Michigan and then loses to, I don't know maybe you lose to Illinois. Illinois is a decent team, but I think Washington is set up. Imagine Washington beats Michigan and they're barely underdogs. If they beat Michigan, they're set up to be, you're talking about maybe 10-1, although I don't know. But if they do go 10-1 versus Oregon, they could lose to Oregon and possibly still make the playoff. But then it becomes an issue of they really haven't beaten anyone. Because if they beat Michigan, Michigan would be a 3-loss team. And it's like, well, is Michigan really a big win? Winning in Ann Arbor is good, but see, now we're starting to kind of parse through resumes. You've got Illinois at a 15% chance. Yeah, Illinois has to run the table. At Washington, I think they're going to lose that game. Other than, man, this is a manageable schedule for Illinois. Imagine Illinois goes 10-2. They did beat USC. They've got that win. They actually Duke's a quality win. That's a quality win. I'm not even kidding you. Even though that score was ridiculous. It's like turnover luck for Illinois. Versus Rutgers, versus Maryland. My goodness. I mean, Maryland's actually not that bad this year, but I think they're going to finish 9-3 because I think they'll lose to Washington. So obviously they finish 9-3. They have no chance at the playoff. If they finish 10-2, you know, they're going to say, well, our only two losses are to potentially the two top teams in college football. Then it gets interesting. But I don't know about Illinois. I don't know about that. Virginia, they have one loss. It's just so hard with these ACC teams. I just don't see there being two ACC teams in the playoff. At Duke, I think they'll for sure be underdogs in that game. At Cal is tough going out to California. Other than that, I mean, UNC is anemic. Washington State, they should win, although I think Washington State is better than people think. But I think they'll lose to Duke anyways. I think Duke is a team that could really be a thorn in a lot of these ACC contenders' side. Other than that, you've got Tulane would be the third group of five team. Michigan, yeah, Michigan's pretty much screwed now. They have two losses, so you have to beat Washington. I mean, this is the thing for Michigan. They have to think, if this is their cope, is they're going to be favorites in every game leading up to the Ohio State game. And then they have the mental advantage over Ryan Day. That's basically what they have to say as a fan base. Now, I think Washington's going to beat Michigan outright. They're like 4.5, 5-point underdogs. I think Washington has a better coach and a better quarterback. Now, it's tough for Washington traveling West Coast to East Coast with the time issue at noon Eastern time. At Michigan State, I think Michigan should easily beat Michigan State, even though it's a rivalry game. Purdue at Northwestern. Maryland could be a little annoying for Michigan. And they'll probably be like 14, maybe 12-point favorites in that game. Versus Ohio State, you're looking at Michigan like 9-point underdogs in that game right now. But obviously people are going to say, well, they own Ryan Day. So if Michigan can win out and get to 9-2, they'd be playing Ohio State for a chance to make the playoff. Could you imagine that? Even after their loss to USC? But I think Washington's going to beat them. I really do. So we'll have to see about that one. And then you have, I wanted to see Nebraska. So Nebraska's a team with a 7% chance because they're not liked analytically. Just look at the schedule for Nebraska. They lost to Michigan. I watched this game. Michigan dominated Nebraska. I don't know how this was a 3-point game. It was because of a Hail Mary at the end of the first half and just a garbage time touchdown by Nebraska. They're at Minnesota. So right now they have one loss. But they have they have the win against Cincinnati. I guess Cincinnati's ranked, but they beat Maryland by 3. They beat Michigan State by 11. Now they're at Minnesota. They're like 6-point favorites. Versus Northwestern, you got to figure that's a win. USC at UCLA may be challenging for them. Actually, you know what? I think Nebraska is definitely going to lose. This is not that easy of a schedule. USC at UCLA at Penn State. I mean, nobody knows what Penn State is going to be. There's an expectation now that Penn State's going to be a lot better because they fired Franklin and they're going to galvanize, with the interim head coach. But they have a backup quarterback. I don't really see Penn State doing all that much. And you have to wonder about some of those players not wanting to play at the end of the season. I don't know. But Nebraska's in a spot to where if they go 10-2, I said they might not make it, but I think they would make it because I think the schedule is good enough, especially if Cincinnati keeps winning enough games. But guys, I think that's pretty much it. And then Cincinnati also at 5-1. So they lost to Nebraska by 3 points. Their big win would be over Iowa State. At Oklahoma State versus Baylor, those are very likely wins. Baylor's a good offense, though. I could see them losing to Baylor, but they got them at home. At Utah versus Arizona versus BYU, yeah, that's a challenge. That's a challenge. That's going to be a problem for Cincinnati. They're not gonna go undefeated with this schedule. They're gonna lose at least 2 games, I think, minimum. So best case for Cincinnati would be 9-3. Realistic case is probably 8-4 for Cincinnati this season. But guys, that's just a look. I mean, I think that's pretty much everyone. There's really you got Louisville with 1 loss. I'm not going to go through all these teams. Auburn at 3-3. Resume, you want to see strength of record. They love strength of record. Yeah, so they'll definitely talk about strength of record when it comes. Actually, one thing I wanted to show is the FPI. So you look at this, look at the difference between number 1 and number 2, 25.9, 22.8. That's 3.1 points different. Basically, Ohio State versus Indiana on a neutral field is Ohio State -3. Ohio State at home against Indiana is Ohio State -6. Ohio State at Indiana is a pick'em. So Ohio State is starting to separate themselves from, you can see Alabama very close to Indiana, just 0.2% point difference. Notre Dame at 22, 21.9, 21.5, 20.9. But there's a separation between Ohio State and Indiana. Do I really believe that? Probably not. I mean, you could say Ohio State's got a really great defense. I don't know if I really believe that type of separation between Ohio State and all the other teams. Obviously, people are going to say, well, they hate the ACC. Miami should be way higher. But that's just where they rank Miami. So it's interesting. Ohio State is starting to pull away. Resume-wise, Indiana is number 1 in strength of record because they have the win at Eugene. It's a very low percent chance of a win. And when you beat a team like that, your strength of record is going to go through the roof. A&M's at number 2, Ohio State's at number 3, Miami, Bama, Tech, and so on. But strength of record is a great indicator in terms of teams that, like, if you have a really good strength of record, but it changes really rapidly through each week. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.